do you ever feel like you're just gutting it out? You know that you should do this and do that, and you can do that for a little while. You can force yourself to do that, but eventually that motivation fizzles out and fades, and you're kind of stuck right back where you started without any progress, without anything to show for it. There are two types of motivation, right? There is push motivation, which if you're a high-performing individual, you're listening to this podcast, you probably have a lot of that. And that's where we force ourselves to do what needs to be done, even if it's not necessarily what we want to do or love doing, but it's got to get done, and we get in there and we get it done. And you have to have that, right? There's nobody in this world that is successful without working hard. But the people that far and vastly outperform their peers and are way, way above normal, they're tapping into something else. They're tapping into a different type of motivation. And we're going to get into that in today's episode. I'm going to break down some reasoning that I've done, some thought audits, some discoveries I've made, and some questions that I've asked myself. And I'm going to give you 3 specific questions that you can ask yourself to help refine this and to help you identify what might uncover this other type of motivation for you. We're also going to touch on the thing that is absolutely corrosive to motivation, that destroys motivation and will keep you stuck, and how to change that, how to fix that. So let's get into it. I was listening to another podcast the other day, and the guy was talking about what do you want? And he was framing it in a pretty general way, just like, you got to know what you want. You got to lay it out clearly. What do you want? But he didn't really give any practical structure or methodology to figure that out. And so I stewed on that and thought about that and spent really a couple of hours over a few days just going through these things, going through these motions, and figuring out what makes me tick. What do I want? And why am I lacking motivation in certain areas? Why am I not getting the things done that I want to get done? And then in other areas of my life, I crush it and I excel. And so what is the difference, and what's the direction that I should go? And I want you to think about this so that you can apply this to what you're doing. The first thing to kind of open this up is what's on your mind. And what do you want to accomplish from this work, right? So if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have something on your mind. Maybe it's a deal you're struggling with. Maybe it's a problem with your business. Maybe you need to grow more sales. Maybe you need to get that house under contract that you're trying to flip. Whatever it is, what's on your mind right now, and what do you hope to accomplish from doing this exercise? What should I focus on? And maybe what do I need to get rid of? Okay, so that's just sort of the overarching how we're starting here is like, what's on your mind? Write down whatever it is, and what do you hope to accomplish out of this exercise of figuring out what you want? Now, here are the questions. Fast forward 3 years, and you can tell yourself, all right, this last 3 years, this chapter worked. What must be true about your income? And there's 3 parts to that question, okay? So if you were to fast forward 3 years in the future, so let's say it's 2029, and you're like, wow, that chapter of my life really, really worked. That segment worked. What must be true about your income? So the 3 components of that is what dollar amount, right? What are you making per year in your income, right? So put a number to that. Is it 100,000? Is it 500,000? Is it a million? Is it 5 million? Like, what must be true for you to look back at the last 3 years and say, this chapter worked, okay? So really assign a number to that. I want you to think about that and maybe even reach a little bit. Maybe get a little bit outside of your comfort zone, but it's got to be something that is also believable to you, that you can believe in, okay? What about the predictability of that income? How reliable is it? How are you earning it? What does that look like? Is it you flipped a big apartment complex and you made $1 million? Is it you cash out, refinance something? Is it monthly income flowing in? through your active business? What is that? What is the predictability level of that income? And then third component of that is, what does it depend on, right? Is it wholly dependent on you? Are you working 80 hours a week to earn this income? Have you just killed yourself burning the candle at both ends? Or does it work completely without you, no involvement at all? Like this is just totally passive investments. You've got money in the stock market, or you're a limited partner investor, or you've put capital into a debt fund. It's paying you 8, 9, 10%. What does it look like as far as what does it depend on to continue to work? Okay, so that's question number one. Question number two, and we're going to revisit these with kind of my answers and insights. And because I went through this exercise about 5, 6 years ago, it totally changed the trajectory of my life. Number two, what actually gives you energy, not just money, but what actually gives you energy in your work when it's done well? Money aside, okay? That's our second question. And then the third question is, what outcome would feel like a failure even if it made money, right? So let's say you hit that dollar amount under question one, and you got the outcome you wanted as far as that component of the question, but it still feels like a failure. What does that outcome look like? Okay, so I'm going to compare this to 5, 6 years ago when I was running my construction company and the thoughts that I had through that. Okay, so I wanted to make a living. I was making 100, 150,000. I thought if I could make 300 or 400,000, that would be phenomenal, and all my problems would be solved. But the predictability, right? Let's talk about the reliable, not dependent on one-offs, right? So if I had a client that wanted to build a custom home, and let's say it's $1 million custom home and I was going to make 15% off it, like, wow, I can make $150,000 off of that job. And real life example, had a client that hired me to build about a $700,000 house, and the day we were starting, like literally we had started to clear his lot and we were going to be working on the foundation next, like he fires me. I've talked about that on this podcast, and he thought we were just taking too long and didn't get it done. I mean, it was raining a whole lot and this site was a mess, and that was why we were delayed. But anyways, he couldn't see that. He fired me and he went another way. And that immediately, like, boom, all that predictable income, that, $70,000 to $150,000 I was going to make on that job went away. Not only that, my project manager that was assigned to it, my subs were lined up for it. Like, it was going to cover a lot of our overhead, and that job disappeared. The predictability just wasn't there for that. And I didn't have enough work to backfill that because I didn't want to take on too much work because I had to build this custom home. And then depends on what. I was legitimately killing myself, working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. I'm up at late at night taking phone calls, working on spreadsheets. I'm trying to run the marketing. I'm trying to run the accounting. I'm dealing with employee problems. I'm hiring people. I'm firing people. I'm finding new subs. And I had a team, but they were all looking at me to lead that ship and go where I wanted to go. And really, if I didn't go out and kill and eat the next job and find the next custom home to build or the next house to remodel or whatever it was fully dependent on me. It wasn't going to happen. And when I sold that company and when I left, I hate to say it, but it slowly died. The guy that took it over ended up wrapping it up within a few years and just could not do what I did. And so the business really was 100% dependent on me. And when that's the case, you really don't have a business. I mean, you really don't have a good business that's really worth anything. And so, fast forwarding 3 years, I was able to increase the income. I was able to scale that company. But I wasn't able to look back at that chapter and say, that worked and I'm happy with that, because those things weren't true about my income. The money there was there, but the way that I made the money was not there. The predictability wasn't there, and the dependence was fully on me. And so when I had those two things, like, man, this is completely dependent on me and it's really, really unpredictable, even though I made the money, well, Am I going to make the money next year? Am I going to make the money a year after that? What if the economy turns? What if the economy, gets big and I hire on all these people and then the economy contracts and I've got too much staff and on and on and on, right? And so that was something that bothered me. And just because I think this way and these things are important to me, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily important to you. And that's why it's important to figure out, what do you want? You may want the big company. You may want 100 employees. You may want to be doing, $50 million a year in roofing jobs or contracting or whatever. And you're going to be very well compensated for doing that. And that's why it's so important to understand, what do you, listening to this episode, truly want? How do you tick? What makes you cringe inside? What do you embrace and say, man, that's the direction that I want to go? That's the future that I want. And there are no really right or wrong answers to this, because every human being is so different and what drives them. And we're going to get into that. Okay, let's go on to question 2. What actually gives you energy, not just money, when done well? And this is kind of what I was alluding to. So for me, there are a lot of different things that give people energy. To me, what gives me the most energy, what lights me up the most, is like winning. So I equate winning to closing a deal, to raising capital and seeing an investor come alongside of me. I equate winning to seeing a deal room member close their first deal or their 10th deal and change their life. I equate winning to a one-time event where it's done, it's won, we've sold the property, we've refinanced the property, we bought a property, we've raised the capital, we've invested the money, we've returned the money to the investors. Winning is important to me. Finding opportunities and finding deals, like that's my second thing, is structuring. Like I really enjoy the deal structure. How can I creatively structure this deal, right? How can I make it so attractive that investors want to get in with me? How can I give them good returns while also it's worth my while to operate this property and make it tick and make it work and make it make money? How can I structure this deal creatively? Like, what if I don't have piles of cash laying around? How can I do owner financing? How can I do a seller carryback? I've bought 5 or 6 deals with none of my own money and no investor money either, which is frankly pretty incredible, that I'm amortizing debt, cash flowing, and I didn't have to put any capital into the deal, and I didn't have to raise any capital or split it up with other deals or with other investors. I love that kind of stuff. When people call me in the deal room that are like, hey, I got this deal, like I'm trying to figure out how to structure it, like what do you think? Like I'm happy to take that call. I don't mind that at all. I want to dig into the details of that deal. Or they've got a good opportunity and I know that they're qualified, like they know what they're talking about, and they're like, hey man, I got a winner. I'm excited. Like, what did they find? How did they find it? What channels did they go through? How are they doing their debt? How are they doing their equity? What's the business plan? How are they going to execute it? Like that stuff lights me up, understanding how they're going to do that. So those are the 2 main drivers that actually give me energy, not just money, is the win, like the sale, the close. I don't know what it is about me, but I'm just kind of wired that way. I know some people on the other end of the spectrum, like I'll take, for example, my sister Crystal. Crystal is more wired on the operational side. Like she really loves digging into rent rolls and expense reports and meeting with the property managers and tuning up properties, making them perform really, really well, adding to the NOI. That is critically important. In fact, is probably more important than the sales guy, is the guy that's delivering the product and making the thing work and making the business tick and hum and work. But I've got to be honest with myself. It's like, that's not what lights me up. And so she's very different. Like if she went through this exercise, she's not going to say that's going to give her energy. That's not going to light her up. Whereas she's going to say, hey, we took the rent roll from $20,000 a month to $35,000 a month, and we got our expenses down by 15%, and we got this rent bump, and we're cash flowing X, and now the valuation is X, and we're going to be able to sell it and make $1 million. Like that's what lights her up. So think about what outcome is going to give you energy. What do you like doing? Look at your history. What have you succeeded in? What feels easy for you to do where you're like, it's not forced? Like I think about, dude, I love getting on the internet, getting on Crexy, getting on LoopNet, just seeing like what's out there. I like poking around on the tax maps and like seeing like, oh, this piece of land doesn't have any wetlands on it and it's zoned correctly. And you know what? Let me call that owner and see if they've got any interest in selling it. Like, I like that kind of stuff. Finding hidden opportunities, making deals happen, creating value out of thin air, creatively financing stuff, getting sellers to partner with me on deals, raising money from investors, getting them to buy into my vision. That's what gives me energy. You don't have to force me to do those kind of things. I like doing those kind of things. It's easy for me. And when you have that pull motivation, right? We talked about push motivation, where you're pushing yourself, you're forcing yourself, you're gutting it out. And then we talked about the pull motivation. The pull motivation is stuff that it draws you forward. It's something that you want to do because it gives you energy, it makes you happy, you're making progress, and it gives you fulfillment. Case in point, going to the gym. I've been going to the gym now for 4 years, 3 days a week. I've actually got to go to the gym at 3 o'clock right after this podcast. And I hate it. I still hate it. They say, oh, you're going to like it. You're going to end up, I like the way that I look. I like the way that I feel. I like that my knees and my shoulders don't hurt anymore. I like that I'm not overweight. But I don't like going to the gym. It's still a push motivation. And I still have to do that, right? Because if I don't do that, I'm going to suffer the consequences of that. And that's where I'm saying some things you do have to push yourself to do that you may not necessarily enjoy. But when you're talking about funneling yourself into something that's going to be spectacular in the business world, it's got to be a motivation that pulls you forward, or you're going to burn out, you're going to stop doing it, you're going to not have the motivation to do things you need to do to succeed. Okay? So that is the second question. What actually gives you energy, not just money, when done well? Moving on to our third question. What outcome would feel like a failure even if it made money? What outcome would feel like a failure even if it made money? Some of the things that I wrote down here were outcomes that command performance from me. Outcomes that require perpetual recreating, perpetual re-earning. Okay, think about this. When I would do a construction job, I would have the contract, I'd win the contract, I'd be on top of the moon, like, wow, I made a sale, I won, I felt great. But now I got to perform it. And as I perform that, I would do it because I have to do it, and that was the push motivation, and I would do a good job. But when that was done, that money was earned, right? I got the check, and I spent a lot of it on my living expenses. I spent some of it paying my employees. I saved some of it. I invested some of it. But the majority of it was eaten, right? I wasn't building something for the future. I eventually did sell the company for very little money, but I sold the company, and I didn't build like an enterprise that was, you hear about these guys selling companies for $40 million or $100 million, right? They're building something different than I was building. And what I was building was just a paycheck every month or every week or whatever I was doing there. And so that perpetual re-earning was exhausting to me. Fragile income, right? Where that outcome feels like a failure. Fragile income. It's like, okay, man, my construction company killed it. We did really, really good in 2024, but now 2025 smacked us in the face. That happened to me. In 2006 and 7 and even 8, like I was on top of the world. Construction company was doing great. And then we hit the Great Recession, and man, I got murdered. My income was very fragile. It went from $150,000, $200,000 to negative $50,000 overnight almost. And now I've got bills stacking up, and I've got mortgages, and I'm trying to remodel my own personal house and owe the IRS money and all this stuff. The income was super fragile. And so I don't want to build that outcome where it's like, yes, you won big that one time, but are you going to do it again? Another thing is like those one-off events, right? So if you're flipping a house or maybe wholesaling, it can be fragile income, right? When I sold Tulsa, Oklahoma, we made a decent amount of money, a good chunk of money, and it came in the bank account. But it was done, right? The asset was sold. Now I got to pay taxes. It's not going to make any more cash flow. It's not going to appreciate anymore. I'm not going to pay the mortgage down anymore. Like, that asset is done. And so that one-time event, Yes, maybe it helped me hit my goal for income that year, but it didn't put a brick in the wall. It didn't like get perpetual income unless I took that money and I put it into another instrument, which is what I did. I put it into hard money lending and into the debt fund, and now it's earning me income every month, which is nice. And so there's definitely something to be said about making those lump sum payments, but eventually you want to get to where that income does not require a command performance from you. It doesn't require perpetual re-earning. It's not fragile, and you're not losing your autonomy. This is huge for me. I don't know why it's huge for me. I did this Enneagram test, and autonomy was very, very high on my hierarchy of needs. Autonomy being like feeling trapped, feeling tied to something. With the construction company, it was like, man, I have all of these responsibilities. I've made all these promises to all these clients. I've got all these employees that are depending on me to pay them every week so that they can provide for their families. And I'm trapped. Like, I can't leave. I've got to be there. If I go on vacation for a week, I've got 2 weeks worth of work piled up on me when I come back. And my phone's ringing off the hook the whole time I'm gone because I didn't build it right, to be frank with you, to be honest with you. And so I felt a loss of autonomy there where it's like, man, I can't just pick up and go. I can't pick up and go, go to the beach for a week with my wife. I can't hit up Europe. I can't enjoy the ski trip with my kids because I don't have autonomy over this beast that I've built. And so those are the three things that what outcome would feel like failure even if it made money. And knowing what you don't want a lot of times is the key to figuring out what you do want, what is working. And I think that's why I was so drawn and continue to be drawn to real estate and investing and passive income, because it checks all those boxes, right? You think about this. If you have, fast forward 3 years of this work, let's say your income is $1 million a year, 3 years from now. It's also predictable and reliable. That $1 million is not coming from one-off events like, oh, well, yeah, we refinanced this one building and we got $500,000. So there's half my money for the year. Well, are you gonna be able to refinance out $500,000 next year, and the year after that? No, absolutely not. We sold this property and it made $500,000. Okay, well, can you sell it again? No, you already sold it. It's gone. And so that income, $1 million a year, like, yeah, you made $1 million that 1 year, but it's not predictable. And then depends on what? The daily showing up, the loss of autonomy, the being completely tied to that. You think the dentist cares? The dentist that's renting his triple net office from me, who's paying down my mortgage, who's giving me some cash flow every month, who's letting me ride the appreciation of the property. Do you think he cares if I go on vacation for a week? Do you think he wants me to like check it? Okay, what appointments have you booked this week? Like, are you scrubbing enough teeth? Are you doing enough extractions? Like, what's going on? Give me your business plan. Like, we need to be meeting and I got to give you a vision for your business. No, he doesn't want me there. He wants me to leave him alone. He wants me to maintain his property, keep it in good shape. He wants me to, pay the taxes and pay the insurance, and that's it, right? He doesn't want me involved in my life. My tenants, 73-unit apartment complex, Moncks Corner, South Carolina, they don't even know who I am. They have no idea. I mean, they know some LLC owns the building. They don't know who Jennings Smith is. They don't want to know. They don't care what I'm doing on a Saturday night, whether I'm in Las Vegas, Europe, or I'm sitting in my home here in Somerville. It doesn't matter to them, right? And so that is something that you got to think about, and that's why real estate was so attractive to me, was the autonomy part and the predictability. Going back to what outcome would feel like failure, even if it made money, having to re-earn, perpetual re-earning and reinvention of yourself, right? When I was selling custom homes, I had to reinvent my marketing. I had to figure out which ways to sell to clients. I had to know every detail about them. I had to sit there multiple times at the kitchen table and convince them and show them budgets and do all this back-end work to maybe get the job. And then when I got it, it was once and done. I'd earned the money, job's over, got to go get the next job, right? Whereas now, I have a spreadsheet and it's called amortizing debt. and I have every property that I own in there. You know, my primary home, I've got my apartment complexes, I've got my self-storage facilities, I've got my offices in there, I've got my medical there, the triple net stuff, and all of those I have how much debt I'm amortizing every month. And it's a pretty cool number. And the reason it's pretty cool is because it's like, it doesn't hurt. It's almost like a forced savings plan where, you know, imagine if I said, hey, you got to save like $20,000, $30,000 a month. You know, well, one, you got to earn $50,000 a month just to live. And then, you know, you've got, because you're saving $30,000, that leaves like $10,000 to $20,000 to live on. So you got to earn that much money day one. And then you got to shrink your lifestyle because you're putting so much capital away. Whereas when you're paying down debt, it's automatic, right? I mean, you got to pay the bank, and the bank balance goes down every single month. And it's automatic. It's another brick in the wall. It's another $5,000, another $10,000, another $12,000, another $14,000. And that balance of the loan just goes down and down and down and down. At the same time, if that building is cash flowing $2,000 a month, well, next month is probably going to cash flow $2,000. And the next month is probably going to cash flow $2,000. And it might even cash flow more because now you're raising rents. Maybe you're trimming up your expenses. You know, the cash flow, it can go the other way too. I'm not saying that. But for the most part, if you're collecting $50,000 a month on an apartment complex in January, you're probably going to collect somewhere around $50,000 in February. It's not going to drop down to $30,000. It might go to $48,000 or $49,000, and you got to balance that. But it's pretty dang predictable because if they don't pay their rent, they're not going to have a place to live. And if they leave, you can pretty easily replace them with another tenant. And so that perpetual re-earning, it just isn't there. It's like I worked hard one time to close that deal, and now every month I'm amortizing debt. Every month I'm collecting cash flow. Every month the government continues to print money and stuff gets more expensive. And guess what? My apartment complex becomes worth more and more and more, historically 2 to 3% a year over the last 50 years. You do that, your property values double in 15 to 20 years. And they get paid, pretty much paid off. You know, most commercial loans are 20 to 25 year AM. So in 20 years, there's either no balance due on that loan or very, very little. And so not only did you pay off that debt of $2 million, it also gained value of $2 million. There's $4 million, and you made, you know, $50,000 to $100,000 a year in cash flow for 20 years on top of that, which is another $2 million. Right? So when you work hard one time to do this, it's perpetually re-earning on its own versus you having to go out and kill and eat and kill and eat. And that's why this was so attractive to me. I think about our debt fund. You know, we are a co-GP on Rehab Wallet, which is a debt fund here in Charleston, $130 million in that fund. And they loan out hard money to people that are fixing and flipping houses or buying, you know, houses from wholesalers and then refinancing them and holding them as rentals. And long story short is they are a capital provider. And I'm a co-GP to help them bring capital to that fund. And when I bring a $100,000 investor into that fund, I make a piece of the interest that's earned on that money. And it typically ends up being a few percentage points. And it's not that much to write home about, $2,000 to $3,000 per year. But when I put an investor into the debt fund, which is a rock solid investment, we're in first position liens only at 65 to 70% leverage. And if they don't pay, we can take the house and sell it and get our money back. Like, it's pretty safe, pretty predictable, and they're paying out every single month. And so that is predictable income for me. And so if I close an investor on jumping into the debt fund, they're going to make $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 per year on interest. And I'm going to make a few $1,000s, and they're going to be happy to stay there. As long as we perform, as long as we do what we say, as long as we keep paying that distribution every month, why are they going to leave? Right? They're probably going to add more capital to that fund. They're probably going to tell their brother-in-law, hey, you should get in on this fund with me. I'm making, you know, $8,000. They're sending me a check every single month, or I'm compounding my returns and I'm making better than 8%. It's great. And so when I go out and find that person and get them, you know, explain the proposition to them, show them how they can earn money in the debt fund, that's the work. And I don't mind doing the work because I know that once they go into that fund, they're probably going to stay there for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Like, why not let it grow? Why not let it compound? Why not take the distributions? And that becomes a very, very predictable source of income for me. So that's way more attractive than going out and trying to wholesale or flip something and make $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000, because I got to do that over and over and over and over. And I got to work really, really hard to do it one time to make money one time. So those are the things that resonate with me. So I want you to get out the notebook, write down these 3 questions. Fast forward 3 years from now, what must be true about your income in terms of dollars, in terms of predictability, and who does it depend on? What does it depend on? How much effort of yours does it depend on? Number 2, what actually gives you energy, not just money, when it's done well? And number 3, what outcome would feel like a failure even if it made money? And identifying the things that you don't want with those outcomes help you identify what you do want, and more importantly, help you focus on the right problem. Going back to the one question that started all this, what do you want? You don't want to solve the wrong problem. Yes, I could have gutted it out and doubled my construction company and doubled my revenue and doubled my employees and made more money. But then the end goal is not what I want. And even though I made that money, it's a failure because of the lifestyle cost, the fragile income cost, the having to work harder and harder every year on the hamster wheel to keep that income up. That wasn't what I wanted. And so I wrote it back, I peeled it back. I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to focus on this asset. I'm going to focus on commercial real estate, because even though it's slower and I may not make as much money up front in the short term, long term, this is what I want. This is what I want my life to look like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. And now that I'm in it 5, 6 years, a lot of the things that I wanted are now coming to pass. And the crazy thing, the good thing is, it's getting better and better and better. Every year, those apartment complexes and commercial real estate assets become worth more. There's less money owed on them. They're collecting more in rent. And all those things are compounding in the right direction versus, okay, I performed this year, now I gotta perform twice as hard next year to make it happen again. All right, guys, hopefully this is gonna help you with some mental breakthroughs and thinking through intently what you really want. Make some time this week to do this exercise and unlock your life. Peace.